Justin Burrows. This is Commerce Chats, my high velocity.
Welcome to Commerce Chats. Thank you for joining me, Brian.
Yeah, problem. Anytime.
I just wanted to talk a little bit because I think it's interesting that we are alike in a certain way, that our path to what we did went from kind of more of a consultative role, where we would be SIs, system integrators, that is, people who come in and help a company, perform a discrete project for our part was to help them get, either re-platform their e-commerce website or perhaps create a new one, a greenfield one, which is always, those are fun too, because you're kind of, making it from whole cloth, so to speak. But we have both gone from, you went to engaging with a particular client, Serena and Lily, which they're kind of like, they're not, would you call them like home furnishings? They have very beautiful pillows. What is Serena and Lily?
I mean, they really, home furnishings is a great way to put it. I don't have I'm not on the marketing side. I don't have the marketing spiel, but if you've ever been to one they have about 20 design stores all over the US, and they're gorgeous, right? They have a very specific design aesthetic. They're very kind of California coastal. They're, we're headquartered in Sausalito, California. And I don't know if there's really any other competitor that kind of fills that niche. It's a really, I think, a gorgeous aesthetic. So it's everything from furniture, sofas, chairs, which can all be custom upholstered, a couple hundred fabrics to choose from, right down to pillows and pillow covers, and we really furnish any room in the house, bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms. I mean, really anything you would ever want to stick in a home, we offer that, but within that specific design aesthetic. Yeah.
Well, so it's interesting because I went from the SI world to the systems integrator world to product. I'm working on for a company that's making a product for e-commerce.
Right.
You went to actually working directly with a company. I think one of the things that was challenging for me as in the SI side is that your relationships were kind of boxed in to
it's
what your engagement
very
was.
bounded. Yeah. And some of those relationships can last a long time. I've had, within my former capacity as an consultant or a subcontractor, or whatever that capacity was as an architect in the SI world, some of those relationships have lasted years. And I've worked on projects, walked away, been re-engaged later on because either I was requested or because it seemed like the best fit, and I already knew the technology. So there's an investment there that's already been made, and as long as a particular client is willing to continue that relationship, then you do keep coming back to the same clients over and over and over again. But and now I'm getting a call. Sorry, let me.
That's okay.
Turn this off.
We can edit anything, or I might just leave it in for flavor.
It's okay. Let me turn this off. Okay, great. I got a call in my headphones. So yes, coming back to I think there's a mindset that goes into being an SI versus actually working within a company. That at least for me, there's a sense of continuity that exists working within a company that doesn't exist as an SI. And yes, of course, even as an SI, you want to leave things better than they were when you started. But in the case of Serena and Lily, the technology challenges that I'm working with today are so much fun to work with. I've kind of embraced the idea of really taking ownership of a platform and seeing it through over the long term. So I enjoy working with the people. Obviously, the people you work with are a big part of that too.
Yeah.
I probably would not have considered joining if I didn't really enjoy working with the people that I work with here. It's a great team, and I love that the role that I play is a cross-functional role. So I get to advocate not just for the back office technology teams, but also for the front of the house too, the people that work in the design stores, the people that work in marketing. And I enjoy the cross-functional aspect. I'm not being thrown in to a project as with a very narrow scope of build this thing, right? I get to advocate for the people that are using these tools every single day to get their job done, which I enjoy. I much prefer that, and I enjoy the process of building relationships, long-term relationships with the people that I work with day in and day out.
Well, and I find that's interesting because when you come into a project as a consultant, you're like, this is your scope. This is what you're trying to do. And you're
what you're being paid to do. This is what the client is, because it's T&M, right? So you're you're being paid to do a job, and if you don't really feel the freedom to go beyond that scope, because there's a direct money for time exchange happening.
Yes. Well, and I think that's kind of like that task-oriented element is it's ironic because in our lives as consultants, we see how different companies operate. You go in and you see that it's a little bit like Chekhov said, like each family is unhappy in its own way. Whereas like they're kind of like families. They're not families, but they still are kind of like families where each one works a little bit differently. And you get to see, it's like, oh wow, they really have this kind of set up, or, this one's completely flat. This one is siloed. This one has one magic worker who does all the magic, which is so dangerous. And that is can cause such weird things. But you get a kind of a feel for how like these different companies operate, but you can't really do anything about it, or you can, but you're on this like one task. And also sometimes there's the thing where you're brought in as a remedial, like you're coming in to fix something, or something is caught on fire, which you already are coming into kind of like an emotionally pitched thing. And I think what's interesting about technology is I find it inherently dramatic. I find it inherently emotional in that if you're going to succeed, you kind of have to understand how everybody's feeling. It's not just a straight technical thing. Maybe that's because I'm more on kind of like the requirements side and kind of the business analysis. But I know it, like as an architect, I find like where your magic is that you can kind of see both worlds, your yin and yang together when you come in.
And I like to be very hands-on as well. So because I'm now with an organization, I get to I've earned the right, I guess, to kind of decide how I want to contribute. And I like keeping my hands. I'm definitely not a hands-off architect. I like to be in the weeds, actually building the thing, because I mean, how can you ever design a system without actually understanding how it works, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but things are changing all the time. It's just the usual rigmarole of technology. You've got to be in there in the weeds, getting seeing how things work and putting the pieces together, and then you can kind of step back and go, oh, okay, well, now I understand how this works. Here's how to best apply it to the problem that we're trying to solve. And so that's another one of the many reasons why I like being within an organization, because I get to learn new stuff. Nobody wants to pay you to learn new things as a subcontractor or consultant with an SI. Nobody wants to pay for that, right? With it, to a certain extent. I mean, to some degree, especially if you're doing a replatform to a brand new tech stack, and it's very fresh and shiny and kind of unproven, you do need to rely on people who have experience ramping up on new technology very quickly, and that there's a skill there, right, and being able to look at something
absolutely.
and really quickly understand how it's meant to be applied and how it's supposed to work. Yeah.
Well, and what a lovely segue, because I that skill you're talking about of how to ramp things up, that's not necessarily if you have if companies have their in-house staff, they're really good running the business, they're really good at, the maintenance part of it. But so time was back in the old days when stegostores were walking around, you had you had like an e-commerce app, like
Hmm.
that you had it, you downloaded it, it was on premises,
Right.
like you had it,
Right.
and like that was it. And then we went from that to kind of like a hosted thing where it would be up on the
Hmm.
cloud, but it's still a piece of software that you're like logging into or whatever. And then
Hmm.
we started to just like kind of decompose
Right.
that platform. And so now you have little pieces here and there, and everything has kind of like a separation of concerns, and it's becoming more
Hmm.
and more kind of granular in that architecture culturally was really difficult for a lot of people when they moved into what they
Yeah.
ended up calling like headless or composable. I mean, I know that you had the benefit of having the skills, but I mean, like, what are the because if you do that wrong, not only is it more expensive, it's slower, and you don't know why it's slow,
Yeah.
and there's no vendor that, everyone says you need somebody to kick, which
Yeah.
I don't particularly like having been kicked, being the
Yeah.
person who was kicked. But how how do you approach that to make sure that, like you said, like it's unproven, it's new technology. I mean, it's not unproven, but it's
It's
unproven to
yeah.
you, to your particular client.
Well, I mean, I've been in this modality for the last, what, 2.5 years now. So, but I can certainly the transition is fresh in my mind, right? So I
Yeah.
really throw had to throw 25 years worth of learning, kind of, not entirely out the window, but in order to
Yeah.
really shift my thinking to this new way of doing things, I kind of had to throw all that away, right? Because it really is
Hmm.
very different. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still just software, right? But there really is a kind of a perspective you have. Yeah. So I actually took a few notes here that it's not about, right. So it's not about customization anymore. It's about building contracts across your separations, across these concerns, right? Across
Hmm.
systemic boundaries, right? It's not about, I mean, I think about the years and years I spent customizing monoliths to get them to do what you want, and decompiling the software and injecting new implementations in an effort to make it do what you want to do, because that's the thing that you bought, right? So you need to make it work, right?
Yeah.
So the thinking is, if I'm going to get something to work, it needs to work inside of this piece of software. And the composable style of architecture really liberates you from that, right? Well, I don't have to, all right, I've now licensed to use these 3 or 4 services, right? And we need to
Hmm.
make them all work together. Well, I have choices, right? I have options,
Yeah.
right? I could, all right, I need to add coupons to our e-commerce platform. Well, which of these services that we've licensed to use actually provide that kind of functionality? And let's take a look at it, look at our options, and maybe we just build something new, or which is something that we actually did initially. But that's, composable gives you the freedom to kind of plug in your own thing and then decide later, how you want to approach things, as opposed to monoliths where you're like, well, we want coupons in our e-commerce offering. What is our preferred, what does our monolith
Hmm.
provide? And does
Yeah.
it do what we need it to do? And if it doesn't, well, then we extend it to make it do what we want to do. We don't
Yeah.
build something new. And now you're really locked in, right? Because you're
Hmm.
extending existing functionality in a platform that you're now paying hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for licensing, and and beyond that, millions for hosting. And so now you're stuck, right? Now you're really, really stuck. Whereas I just love how Composable kind of liberates you from that vendor lock, right? And that's obviously that's one of the hallmarks of Composable versus anything that came before it is the ability to stay, to completely unlock yourself from a vendor, right? You really are API first, right? You're thinking about what are the API contracts across systemic boundaries that I need to model in order to build our storefront, right? Irrespective of agnostic of from any of the vendors that we've selected to provide, to plug into the platform to drive that functionality. Any of that could be replaced at any time, and in fact, that's one of the things your organization is thinking about is, how do we build a storefront that lets you kind of plug in. And sorry, I'm kind of rambling and
no.
We might need to edit some of this out.
I'm taking it in. This is like yes. Go. Give me.
Yeah. But sorry, let me step back here. That it's the contracts that drive composable commerce. It's not the vendor selection, right, anymore. The vendors serve. What's a way of saying this? Am I making any sense here?
Absolutely, you are absolutely making sense. It's not about the vendors anymore. Yeah,
an order is an order is an order, right? An order is just a container for a basket that contains a basket of items and prices and promotions and shipping options, and there's nothing about a particular vendor that makes an order, right? It's just it is a model object that contains the things that I need to fulfill as a retailer, right? And I can model that anywhere. I don't even need to use an e-commerce platform, right? I can model that in a JSON object that gets persisted to a cloud storage platform, right? So it doesn't need to be really anything, right? So you're really liberated from the thinking of, oh, I need an e-commerce partner, right? Or I need an e-commerce platform. Well, you really don't need one. You could build this yourself. You just need to be able to define, well, what does an order look like? So let's take Serena and Lily, for example. Furniture is a notoriously difficult.
Yes. I have worked with a few furniture companies actually, and yes, like these they're big, they're hard to visualize. There's go on.
Well, and there's the near infinite customizability, right? You're not selling shirts, right? They come in small, medium, and large, and a dozen colors, right? You are offering a sofa that comes in 200 fabrics with a wide variety of bolt-on options, legs that are in, one of a half dozen different wood finishes, and right. So it's heavily there's a huge element of customizability around the SKUs that exist in your catalog, and you can't model every single one of those as you're literally going to have thousands of SKUs in your catalog for one product, and most commerce offerings don't really know how to deal with that. But if you can model what a customized SKU looks like as a model object, well, now it's just a JSON payload that you're moving around the world, and you just need to be able to develop a pricing model, to implement a middleware that models your pricing, the company's pricing model in just a little hunk of middleware that lives somewhere in the cloud that can price that thing, right? But as long as you've defined a contract that enables you to represent what that thing looks like, then you can throw it into an order, you can pass it to a pricing engine, you can return it to your front end as an entity within a cart that the front end can consume and render in a way that's meaningful to the customer. You're not tied to, well, what kind of catalog functionality does our e-commerce vendor support, right? And can we make it work with this? Well, no, you don't have to think like that anymore, right? You could actually sign on with a commerce vendor that has, that provides some very simple, data modeling capability, and you just store, you store the customization options as metadata on the product, and then let middleware do the work, right? You're not requiring the commerce vendor to do all that for you, to provide all that capability for you, because even in the, because then of course you move to the, you start thinking, well, geez, that seems like a lot of work, right? Now I have to write some middleware to make this all come together. Well, guess what? Even in the Neolithic days of monoliths, you were still doing a tremendous amount of custom engineering to make that supposedly out of the box platform, to get it to do what you needed to do. You're still putting a lot of time and effort into shaping it to make it do what you want. So you're not really, I think we all kind of came to the realization that, why are we beating our heads against a wall trying to, we're still doing a lot of custom development anyways. So let's just take these commerce platforms, break them down into their essential elements, and then make them cheaper and make them simpler, and do the same amount of engineering that you used to do back in the old, back in the Neolithic days, to bolt those things together. And anyways, I'm kind of going on, but
no, you are actually just spontaneously describing the challenges of going into headless, and I definitely have had this experience. I remember when I first started engaging with kind of headless type or composable platforms.
It's because you can still build headless on a monolithic backend. Right? So it really is composable. That's.
But I was doing a task. Like, I'm more like kind of the, I would help to train, because I would train people. Like, that would be part of it. It's like, this is the monolith. This is how you do the monolith. And the expectations for training are much lower now. And to be fair, there are a lot of tasks out there that are just like much easier. It's like, wow, like making this change and having it display on the site. It's kind of like the technology got out of its own way in some respects.
And in some respects, I mean, Composable makes front of the house's lives a little more difficult in some ways, because now they're doing their work across potentially three or four different tool sets, right? So I need to decorate my catalog, right? Well, now I need to go to this tool. Well, I need to write some content. Well, now I go to a CMS, and now I need to, bolt on some sale pricing. Well, now I need to go to my ERP system and plug in some pricing, and now we have a data pipeline that's pushing that pricing to your e-commerce platform, and now I need to wait for that to happen. And so there's a lot more moving parts, and for folks that are having to manage all this data, they're probably touching 3 or 4 or 5 different user experiences to make that all come together. So that's, I think folks on the store merchandising and store management side of the house, their lives have become a little bit more difficult in some ways. Because of the lack of transparency, like how is this all kind of gluing together, right?
And I definitely, I think something that we both have in common is one of the reasons that I got into this particular role is I was on the side of the merchandisers. I was coming in and I was helping to merchandise the site, and which is brutal and it was overwhelming. And you've got somebody, who's, generally like in their 20s, they're getting into, this is their entry into kind of the e-commerce space, or maybe, I find a lot of people, like if I'm doing a project for a fashion house or like couture or a brand that is, like well regarded, a lot of times the people and I was talking with my friend Michaela Drapes with Made Media. It does ticketing for presenters like Royal Albert Hall and some of those names you might have heard, Sydney Opera House, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But the people like at the New
name
York City
dropping.
Ballet, she
Yeah.
was like the people who work customer service there. They are not there because they love customer service, but they
Right.
do, but they're there because
Right.
they love ballet. They love it.
Right. Right.
And so, but a lot of these merchandisers, especially in fashion, are people who are like, they're not in ecom, they're in fashion working in ecom.
Right. Right.
And so you're having people who are passionate about the product and what they're doing. And a lot of times they end up, and I think I'm using this correctly when I talk about tech debt, is that tech debt is, as I understand it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, tech debt is when you gloss over some things just to get something working, that there are other things that you needed to fix, but that you have a workaround for. Would you say that that's correct, or do I have that misapprehended?
Maybe that could introduce tech debt. Because one of the things I like about Composable is that you can, within reason, kind of kick the can on some architectural decisions down the road, knowing that, I don't know, let's say you're adding promotions to your storefront, and you don't really know yet the full extent to which the business wants to use promotions. So, do you spend a lot of time and engineering effort or product research looking for like the end be all end all of promotions engines, or do you kind of roll your own? You could roll your own, like micro promotion engine, right? Just to get yourself over the hump. I mean, the nice thing about Composable is you can define a promotion. You can define what does a promotion mean in the context of your business, right? Again, irrespective of any vendor selection or implementation, underlying implementation details or architecture, right? What does a promotion mean, and what do you need to get out of it? Well, I can implement that a wide variety of ways, but the notion of what a promotion is, notion of rhyming here, is going to remain fairly constant, and you might expand on that over time as the needs of the business around promotions become more and more complex. But and this I think that this speaks to there's a conversation here around right sizing of projects and architectures, right? Designs. Don't caution against over engineering of something where you're not really sure what the degree of opt-in is going to be around a certain feature set within your platform. Like, don't just kind of bolt something in, make it work, make it resilient within the context of how you've implemented it and designed it. But know that because you have a composable architecture, you could a year from now go with a real, decide that, oh yeah, these promotions that we've built are really, turning the company, they're driving massive growth in our business. We need to go even further with this, right?
Yeah.
And now you go all in on promotions, right? Now you reach out to any number of the enterprise grade promotion providers out there, marketing campaign promotion coupon providers out there. But the contract stays the same, right? So the front end doesn't change, right? A promotion's still a promotion.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to do a little bit of the data migration behind the scenes, or maybe you've coded your promotions in such a way that you could actually reach out to both systems, right? So you still have your micro promotion engine still running behind the scenes, but based on, maybe you get clever with your coupon coding in such a way that, well, oh, I know this coupon's coming from the new system, right? So, but again, the contract hasn't changed, and you can now kind of starve out the old integration, the old service, and gracefully migrate to a new service. So I don't know how we got down this path, but there's
they're all related.
No, it's not, but not tech debt. Are we talking about tech debt? It's not tech debt. It technically is tech debt, but it's tech debt that you are buying, that you are actually baking into your platform. Real tech debt is where you just feel like, I just don't know what I want to do with this, and you just kind of bolted in there unknowingly, implementing it in a way that really isn't serving the business well, and you kind of,
but my argument is that the people who pay the price for that are the merchandisers, typically the people in the front end.
Yes.
Because they end up having to they end up being full-time data masseuses. Right? It's like, you don't have this integration built, you don't know what you're going to do. Don't worry, we'll just put it in a CSV. I'll put in a macro. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen somewhere somebody's got a macro in an Excel to append a single letter to the beginning of a code because their ERP only has like literally there was one where it's like their ERP only allowed for 6 digits, and they had way more than 6 digits worth of these records.
You're right. I mean, and in fact, that use case that I just was happily, going through around promotions and being able to switch platforms without affecting the overall. I mean, that is tech debt from the merchandiser standpoint, because now they're having to interact with 2 different platforms, the legacy platform that you built to just get you going, and now the new fancy all the bells and whistles platform, and now they're schizophrenic, having to work. All right, we update the campaign that we launched last year. Well, does it live in the new system or the old system? And now there's a lot of extra kind of you're paying for that with all these little with inefficiencies in the merchandising marketing.
A lot of times, I mean, a lot of times it's worth it, and a lot of times, I mean, I just think it's important that you include merchandisers in the conversation, in that you actually have that, to where, because the more you do those things, those little physical, which are necessary, it's part of the job. But if it goes too far, that person's personal agency goes away, and you're basically making a person work for the technology and not the technology working for the person. It's unavoidable. We all hold technology up, and we all work for technology, but I think it's something that we should always keep in mind. But you mentioned something that I think is a real challenge for in the composable space, is that like a lot of vendors that come to you and they have this bucket of good. I just happen to have a bucket just right there. They have this bucket of goods, right? And in it, it's like, well, we got a catalog, we got order, we've got promotions, we've got all these things, we've got a front end, thing, accelerator. But the thing is that the way they price it is like, okay, here's your bucket, right? And it's like, I just wanted this. You guys are composable, but then I've got like all of these. Like, why do I actually? And I think it's interesting because, like, fundamentally, that the model it's not a composable model, right? And you end up with these things that it's like, I mean, we've seen it over and over again. Like even like with the monoliths, like going back to, do you remember ATG? Do you remember that platform?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But you know how that platform, and you even see it with Salesforce Commerce Cloud, you would see little changes. It was always a tell in the UI. There was always a little bit, there was a different color, there was a different platform, like where they bolted it in.
In there.
You had, what is it, the admin control console, ACC, you had the BCC, then you had like the promotions engine, which then kind of became Endeca, which got rebranded, but not. And I think if you go into Salesforce Commerce
even
Cloud,
within a monolith, you're still working within 3 or 4 different tool sets. Right, because
and like
that platform's evolved over time, and
but you go into Salesforce Commerce Cloud, it says Demandware. Like, what? That was like, how long ago was that? But it's hard not to. But so anyway, I see the same type of thing kind of happening in a lot of the composable providers. It's like, well, we gotta sell more. We gotta do more. So they acquire all these things, and they say, oh no, these things are all agnostic, but yet also, but you end
Yeah,
up getting committal because it's like there's this
yeah,
incentive, and trying to sell that, I think must be really
yeah.
challenging from
Right,
that perspective.
right.
Um,
Well, it's hard to
that,
sell. It's hard to sell a. I mean, I can imagine. On the sales side, being a technology vendor within selling yourself as composable. If you are selling e-commerce, it's hard to sell yourself as an e-commerce vendor without providing campaigns and promotions, right? Like how,
mhm.
because that really is something that could live on its own,
Yeah,
right? But coming from the world of monoliths, it is kind of hard to wrap your head around
yeah.
what does that actually look like to provide a cart and a catalog and pricing capabilities, but without promotions, right? How do you separate those two? And it does require a little bit of re-education to imagine what an e-commerce platform that provides a cart and endpoints that drive support for carts but without promotions, right? What would that actually look like? And can you even
Hmm.
call yourself a commerce vendor if you don't provide support for promotions? Well, I think you can, right? You don't, but I think we're still trying to shift away from the mindset. We're still evolving in this
Yeah.
space. I think people are still thinking in terms of platforms that do everything, and maybe in terms of like content. I think content management is now finally
Hmm.
left the e-commerce stable, right? It's
Yeah.
no longer expected that CMS will be part of an e-com platform, but we
Yes.
still think in terms of, all right, promotions and coupons and all this stuff still need to be part of the e-commerce offering, but they don't really have to be. Like catalog management doesn't need to live like, and if that, but then you get to a point where like, well, what is an e-commerce vendor,
Well,
software
this is
vendor
my
providing? Like, what do they
yes.
actually provide?
No,
Right,
that is the I think kind of the existential question, like the what's the word? Like the very theory of
the
the knowledge
essence or
itself. Yeah,
oh yeah,
what,
yeah.
if anything, is an e-commerce
What
platform?
is it? Yeah.
Because it's become there's a word, a really good word
Do we
that
need to
I'm just
abandon that
missing right
that
now.
whole term completely? Do we,
Yeah,
I think it might be worth abandoning, e-commerce, the phrase e-commerce platform. I think we could get rid of that because
yeah.
and then
Well,
break it down to, well, you have catalog, you have pricing, you have
mm,
merchandising, you have campaigns, you have promotions and coupons, you have search, you have category, you have, well, I guess category hierarchy is part of merchandising. Yeah, anyway, sorry. Yeah, but right. Sorry.
no,
Edit this
you're
out. Edit this out.
accessing
Yeah.
your no,
It's like,
you're looking up to your unless you're mirrored, you're looking up to your the left side of your brain.
right,
So
yeah,
you're accessing
it's all happening
information.
over here. We're trying to build a coherent statement that
Well,
is
no, we're
podcast
trying.
worthy.
No, we're no. You're not doing that. What you're doing is what we all kind of have to do, which
Right.
is actually you have to get inside your brain
Yeah.
for these things and to
Yeah.
actually
I'm
restructure
still
how.
rewiring my head. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
We all are.
absolutely. And I find it so. I've been really fascinated by this paper called, it's like originally in German or something like that, but it's like, what, if anything, is is a rabbit? And there was, well, the thing is that with Legomorphs, there are hares, and then there are what we would call bunnies. And there are
Hmm.
all of these in between, but the between a hare, the long, a hare, right? And a
Sure. Yeah.
bunny,
Yeah.
like those are the same thing, but they're not the same. And trying to think about, and there's also a similar problem with what exactly is a zebra, because zebras, there's actually a few different zebras, and there's asses and horses, and then there's that one horse that is spelled like really weird, like Przewski's horse or something, and they're all like interrelated, but some of those zebras like are cousins. They're not actually brother and sister, so
Hmm.
what is
Hmm.
it? Anyway, the whole thing is that there is kind of like and now I'm getting like woo woo, but I think there is a kind of a basic taxonomy refactor that we have to integrate, that we have to internalize when we approach these things, because there are certain challenges. Like I'm thinking about like when I was talking with Michaela, we were talking about, well, you think that your catalog is complex. I have, if 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 an event is a product, okay, that event has 50,000 bespoke seats with another 50,000 like potential add-ons for, like you can pay she's always like, she's talking in pounds because she's fancy and she lives in London now. So it's like you could pay £5 or you could pay £6,000 to go to the same event for this little period, in time. And when you were talking about like all the permutations that come naturally in kind of like a configurable SKU, you are talking about abstracting that catalog, that there is no real single record for that. That only exists as an abstraction of other options.
Right.
And I think that that leads to a lot of discomfort from the old way of thinking about a catalog, where it's like the Sears catalog or something like that, where you just have a long list with products and with SKUs. And like trying to get people to engage with that kind of openness of, especially in terms of, fundamentally, I think it comes to like auditability and money. Like I think financials cast a very, which necessarily financial systems, ERPs, stuff like that, fundamentally have to be very conservative, very stable.
Yeah.
But that's not
data
always the most
consistency,
efficient.
right? It's that I mean, leaving the world of acid transactions, right, and moving into a way of thinking around eventual consistency as a way of life for data consistency, right? So, well, the data is eventually going to get there, right? It's not because now you have data flying between disparate systems all over the place. You've got data crossing areas, different disparate concerns within your architecture.
Brought to you by High Velocity, enterprise front-end app for your commerce stack. Faster performance, faster development, faster launch, faster change, all with one cost of ownership. Speed and direction. High Velocity. That means fast.